Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. As always, proudly in association with Andy's Man Club. Lads, remember, it is okay to talk. Tonight, we are 100% British, but as always, 100% Giants. And the Giants fucking win in week 3. Come on, lads. Get in. There is a God. I'm back. Hello. It's been, I had a week off, didn't I, really? Working hard at work, very, very busy as usual, but I'm back to talk about a win, so it's all good. And I'm joined by this evening by Shane and Craig to talk about that win for the first time since the beginning of January. It's been a long time coming, and with seemingly no one apart from me and Kev back in the Giants this week, we pull it out the bag and leave the dog pound with a notch in the W column. What are we the epitome of optimism? We're too predictable, lads. 1 and 2. How are we doing?
Yeah, not bad. I mean, obviously, I know I had them to lose. Do I regret that decision? Absolutely not. I'm going to be backing them to lose from here on out now. I'm even at the point now where you guys, obviously, we sort of did an unlive stream, we'd call it. I don't know what it was classed as, but us three basically jumped in here and watched the game together and that. And I'm at the point now where the top I wore yesterday is going to be washed tomorrow, dried, and I'll be wearing it again on Thursday because I am that superstitious. Like, if the team wins and I've got the same top on, I'm like, okay, I've got to keep wearing this top now till they win. So that top will be making an appearance again on Thursday.
Oh, no, I'm 100% there with you, mate. The Burns jersey hasn't been worn since week 1. The Okereke Century Red wasn't worn because it was week 2. So it was Eli Manning grayscale jersey that pulled the win out. So it'll be Eli Manning grayscale that I wear Thursday night as well while I'm watching. So I'm definitely all with you there. It's really nice to be positive. I'm actually really looking forward to not just shitting all over a team for once. It'll be nice to talk about some good football. It doesn't mean it's all going to be rosy. It wasn't a perfect game. I think a game of 2 halves is probably the best way to put it. But a win's a win. And, that one looks very, very nice in that column. And I'd much rather see it there than a 0.
Yeah, it's starting to become a bit of an alien thing. Like, what does it feel to how does it feel to win a game? So to get over that hump last night was really nice, and it was really strange in the first half. It was like, what's going on? Like, we haven't seen this type of football from the Giants for a long time. So it was strange, but it was nice at the same time. So yeah, looking forward to getting into it this evening. Should be a good one.
Let's just mention though that within 11 seconds, Shane was ready to start watching college football tape while we were watching.
Yeah, 100%. That literally 11 seconds in, 7 down already, and I messaged one of my mates. I was like, "Yeah, this season can hurry up and end."
Evening mayonnaise. Those first 11 seconds, and then also the flag on the pick 6. Was it a pick 6 as well? Wasn't it? Or interception, or was it just an interception? Can't remember. But yeah, there's obviously flag on that after they decided to rock out their celebration in the end zone. Yeah, that looked good, didn't it? Who's laughing now, Cleveland defense. But yeah, it just feels good to have that notch in the W column. 1 and 2 going into a short week. It feels a hell of a lot better than it would have done being 0 and 3 and going into a short week. Thanks to that mayonnaise interception just inside the 25. Feels a hell of a lot better than going into it 0 and 3. So, lots to get into this evening. Some really good stuff, some not so great stuff as well. So it's going to be a good one. Like I said, if you're watching live on YouTube, X, Twitch, Facebook, get involved in the comments as people already have been, even to you all. Give us your opinions about the game from last night. Get your questions in as well if you have any questions about it as well. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. Feel free to leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice as well. Also, coming up in just 5 short weeks, we have our London meetup at the Marylebone Sports Bar and Grill. All 4 of us will be there, and we hope to have our biggest turnout yet. And don't forget, obviously it is the Giants' legacy game of this season. So if you do turn up wearing a legacy jersey, the first pint is on Mr. Kev, as he's promised. We hope it will be our biggest turnout yet at a watch party. So if you haven't made the decision to come along and join us already, then what are you waiting for? Come along, join us, watch the game, and hopefully we watch a Giants win. And obviously it's a week before Munich as well, so those that can't come to Munich or for whatever reason, hopefully you can join us in London the week before that. We're really looking forward to it, and hopefully those that come are also looking forward to it as well. Now, kicking off tonight in what has become a regular segment on the pod, week 4 of the college football schedule is fully in the books. And it's the first week where all 3 of your teams have won, lads. Going on. All 3 of your college teams win, and the Giants win in the same weekend. Something's amiss here. Something's going wrong. Kev's Notre Dame won 28-3 against Miami to improve 3-1 for the season. Shane, Penn State.
Yeah, man, Penn State. We didn't just win. We abolished Kent State. We had a nice shutout to go 3-0. Penn State won. Giants won. Albion won.
Wow.
Not a bad weekend.
It's a trifecta of victories there. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, sporting weekends don't get much better than that, really, do they?
No, not in September. They don't. No, so it's a good weekend all round. And I think the biggest surprise of the week, FSU, Craig. Again, yes. a one in the win column. What's going on?
Oh, you take it. I mean, Cal 3-0. Cal, we went up against there. 14-9 was not a pretty game by any stretch of the imagination. However, DJ threw a touchdown pass in the game. He actually threw a touchdown pass, and Florida State defense had 7 sacks. So there we go. Lots of
similarities there.
Yeah, a little sack party and some DJ touchdowns. It's almost like watching the Giants.
Is Uyunglele now Heisman favourite?
I don't know. If he's favourite for anything, it's me not saying his name for the entire season. he will be DJ for the entire season.
You say that, and then the Giants are going drafted next April, and then we
stop it.
Imagine.
Stop it.
We'll go from one DJ to another. Bloody hell. But yeah, all round a good weekend for your 3 teams, and rolling into Sunday, and we go into the Giants game. We'll come on to the game shortly. Obviously, there's because it's Monday. There's not been a huge amount of news coming out today. Obviously, with it being a short week as well. Apart from only real sort of news to bring us injury news. During yesterday's game, there were quite a few players that left the game due to injury. Drew Phillips left the game in the first quarter with a calf injury, and then Cordell Flott then moved into the slot to replace him. Adore moved outside to replace Flott, and then Adore went down with a calf injury as well. So they've put Flott back outside, and then Flott went back outside, and then Isaiah Simmons came into the slot to fill the hole left by Cordell. Defensive backfield is a bit of a mess. Darius Slayton then appeared to injure his thumb in the third quarter and was seen walk into the locker room with trainers, but then he returned for the next possession, and X-rays have shown that there's no damage, there's nothing wrong with his thumb. It's all good to go. So happy days. Micah McFadden suffered a back injury after tackling Jerome Ford in the fourth quarter. He was helped off by the trainers, but he did come back in the next possession. Imagine playing linebacker with a back injury. That's got to suck.
I think
playing any position with him.
Yeah.
any position with a back injury would suck. Mayonnaise, he was like a flip-flop. Get out. No, don't get out. It's fine. I love that. Love a pun. And then lastly, John Michael Schmitz went into the medical tent briefly after the first offensive drive. Greg Van Roten was seen on the sideline working on snaps with DJ. But luckily, JMS came back on the very next drive and stayed in the game for the rest of the game. So whatever happened to JMS, obviously it wasn't anything serious, and he managed to carry on in the game as normal. So a few injuries there. Obviously, like I said, the defensive backfield injuries are a bit of a concern. We'll talk more about that in a bit when we go for the defense. But hopefully the last three are nothing to worry about too much. All right, then. Let's take a look back at the game. The Giants' first win in the 2024 season. Entered the game as 6.5-point underdogs. And we defied all expectations and proved both me and Kev right by winning the game 21-15, despite that disastrous start, which Mayonnaise has already alluded to, and we've already alluded to as well. But as Jason Pinnock, or J-Pin, as he's now known as by Bobby Okereke, J-Pin, apparently. Yeah, I know. I heard it's in the post-game presser. He said J-Pin. I'm thinking, J-Pin? Okay, isn't that something you pin like something with? I don't know. But the players' attitude and mentality towards the fumble was fuck it, And Jermaine Illuminor said the energy on the sideline last night in comparison to week one was night and day. Like there was a huge shift in the just the energy and the attitude of the players. Week one against Minnesota, heads were down. Last night against Cleveland, they didn't care. Next play, move on, and let's start getting some points on the board. And look what happened. We now move to 1-2 with a short week coming up as we take on Dallas on Thursday Night Football this week. And there's lots of talking points from the game last night in all three phases of the game as well. So starting off with offense, I'll hand over to Craig. Over to you, mate.
Yeah, there is a hell of a lot to go through. So I apologise if this is a wall of noise from me, but it's nice to talk about some positives as opposed to some negatives. I know I said that at the beginning of the show, but it really is nice to kind of focus on some really good stuff that the Giants did, as opposed to just ruining all the mistakes. So let's start with my player of the game. We'll start there pretty much straight off the bat. And I've given it to Daniel Jones. After a shocking week one performance, Jones really has improved over the last 2 weeks and has improved enough kind of to make us competitive again, which is something that we all kind of worried wouldn't happen, especially after week one where he was seeing ghosts and just looked skittish and didn't trust his offensive line. And we'll get into the offensive line a bit later. But he really, really does look a lot more confident. I'm not saying he's perfect, and he's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying that he's the franchise quarterback that we need. I'm just saying that for what we get right now, he's good enough. There was the interception that was called back from the first offensive play of the game where he threw the ball. Now, I need to watch it again, but I know that Bobby Skinner was saying earlier, and I think I saw it on X as well, people were saying that maybe he expected Theo to be in a different place, and obviously Theo Johnson being a rookie might have just run the route a little bit different than what DJ was expecting. Now, we did get the break, and it was called back correctly for a roughing the passer penalty because DJ took 2 fists to the head pretty much on that play. And, after that, we settled down and we were able to drive the ball downfield and tie it up. So there was the second one where he's in the end zone. One of their defenders gets their hand on the ball. Nabers bats it down. We'll talk about this play a little bit more then. But outside of that, Jones didn't really do anything bad that could have broken the game for the Giants. There were a few iffy moments, but those two really could have been game breakers. And we're just lucky that neither of them sort of came down in the worst way possible. The big negative for me on Jones this season is his inaccuracy on deep throws. He just has an inability to be able to connect with his receivers over 20 yards. He was 1 of 4 yesterday, and there are a couple where he's close, but we don't need close. We need execution, and that's going to be something to watch in, especially if we want to start stretching the field when you've got players like Hyatt and you've got players like Nabers and Slayton, because Slayton's done it many a time, who can stretch the field. We really need his throws to be on time, and we need him to drop those into the bucket, and at the moment he's really, really not doing it. The only completion of over 20 yards was, again, not solely Daniel throwing the ball well. It was a great play by Nabers. And again, we'll cover that when we speak about Malik, because he deserves his own section and not to be amalgamated by Jones. But yeah, the reason that I have Jones as my player of the game is because of the fact of, without him, the rest of the offense doesn't tick. That's the whole thing behind having a quarterback. If your offense plays well, it's probably going to be either a quarterback or your running game's exploded. And that hasn't quite happened for us yet. So that's why I've given it to Jones. I mean, 24 of 34, 236 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, pass rating of 109.4. Could have been higher. There were 2 drop passes, one by Theo Johnson and one by Darius Slayton. And he also had 20 yards on the ground on 8 carries, which isn't amazing for him, but it's enough. He had a really good sort of first down conversion at one point where everyone threw themselves at Singletary and he was able to just escape through. And just bear in mind, this is the first time, it's not a great stat, but it's the first time that Daniel Jones has thrown 2 touchdowns in back-to-back games in a few years. Like, this is what we need from DJ. Like, we really, really need him to step up. And I think there was a stat, like, he hasn't thrown more than 2 touchdowns since 2019. And we need more. But this was an improvement on week 2. Week 2 was night and day compared to week 1. So we could just get better as we go forward. So it'd be interesting to see, how this goes over the next few weeks. But short week, Dallas, we know what Dallas is like. So there we go. Shane, I'm going to come to you first as the sort of detractor of Jones, and that's not a bad thing. We're all entitled to our opinion, and especially after week 1, that was a valid point. But do you think Jones has now done enough that, barring any disasters, he deserves to start for the Giants for the rest of the season?
I think, in all honesty, you've got to take it game by game. Because the big thing for me, and I've said this to you guys, and I've said it in the group chat numerous times, the big thing for me is, can he do it at MetLife? Because I feel at MetLife, he doesn't quite cope with the pressure, and the fans get on his back quite quickly, which is unfair. But at the end of the day, they've paid $300, $400, $500 and more. They're entitled to voice their opinions however they want, whether they want to do it after the first play or the 51st play. It's up to them at the end of the day. So I want to see if he can do it at MetLife. And excuse me, if you look at every play at the weekend, I still think Daniel Jones is done as a New York Giant at the end of the year. I think when you look at what did he play weekend like a 40 million quarterback? No, he didn't. And that's the big sticking point for me. Is now you're looking at what you're paying him and the performances you're getting. And I think it'll still be a mistake to not get rid of him, or not do something in terms of the contract and the money. But I don't. It works mentally in America, though, so I don't fully understand as to what they can do. But for the time being, yeah, it's a short week. It's going to be a big week because it's Dallas. It's a divisional rival. He's going to have the horrors of probably week 1 last year, just like me and you two will, after what happened last year. It's all going to be in our memories still. It's at MetLife, so I was pleased the way that he played the weekend. Disappointed with his second half, which I'm sure you'll come on to probably in a little bit while, and we'll talk about it or whatever. But the first half he did well. I think he got a little bit lucky with that interception that he threw. The fact that it was called back for, I don't know, was it DPI? I think it was called back for. Can't quite remember. But it's still a throw that he can't make that throw. You just cannot do it. But at the end of the day, the main thing is he got the dub, and now, which I'm sure we'll be talking about soon, he's got a true alpha receiver.
Indeed. Dan, what are your thoughts on DJ for the remainder of the season?
I think
I know we're 3 weeks in. I know we're 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
Just before I say that, but go on.
I think you'd be wrong to say he won't start under centre every game. But like Shane said as well, I think it is almost like a case. It's week by week. It all depends on the game plan as well. There might be a game coming up later in the season where I think Drew Lock has a better chance of winning a game against that defense than Daniel Jones does. Probably not, but I think between out of the three, he is the best shot and he is the better of the three quarterbacks. Like you say, he's still struggling to find his receivers deep, which is a concern. But I'm hoping it'll come with time. Obviously, he's got the likes of Nabers, Slayton, Hyatt, Wandale, that can all run, sub 4.5, 40 yards, and he's not hitting them yet. So it's almost a case of, is the timing slightly off? What's going on there? He's not set the world alight over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, week 1 didn't happen. Last week and this week, he's not been amazing, but he's been consistent. And what I think he's really shown over the last 2 weeks that I'm quite impressed with is his maturity. He didn't let week 1 fluster him too much. I think he came in and did what he needed to do last week against Washington, and again this week. He made sensible decisions. The odd deep pass thrown in for good measure where he needed to or where he could. Yeah, he didn't hit it, but it's not always a given. A 70% completion rate this week, and his best rated game since the playoff win against Minnesota as well. So yeah, unless something drastic happens, I think undeniably he's a starter for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and it's all valid points. I think Mayo makes a good point here as well. Like, you can win games with Daniel Jones, but again, we didn't top 21 points, 24 with better kicking. He needs to show he has a 35-point performance in him. If we're alive in the playoffs, you play him. If not, play lock.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it's going to come down. Go on.
At the same, I agree with what he says, but at the same time, if we get notches in the win column, that's what matters. What matters is getting wins in this league. Whether you score 21 points, 24 points, or whether you score 45 points, if you get a win every week, you're going to be there or thereabouts when it comes to the big dance in January. And I think, yes, we need to score more points. We've said that for a long time, but I don't necessarily think that scoring 35 points week in, week out is 100% necessary to get far in this league. I think we've got a solid defense as well, which we'll come on to later. And I think that defense and the offense can complement each other and play really good complementary football, that actually 21 points is enough to win a game. So, yeah, I'm not overly sold on that point.
I think the thing is, how many games are you going to win in the National Football League only scoring 21 or less points?
Yeah.
I would think it's going to be under 4.5, under 5.5 potentially.
Yeah, I mean, also we don't want to rely on our defense too much, because as we saw yesterday, we struggled once the offense started struggling, the defense started struggling in that second half, and it was just a case of that first half performance was kind of the most amalgamated performance that we've had between the two sides of the ball. I get it. I get where you're coming from, but yeah, like 21 points. I guarantee there hasn't been a Super Bowl winning team that hasn't exceeded 21 points. Like, it has to happen at some point, and Jones is going to have to be the one to do it. I think the problem that Jones has is the inconsistencies he's had over the seasons, where he's not scoring enough points, he's not throwing for touchdowns, is the issue around his contract and the perception of Giants fans of him, and that's what he needs to shake.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing that you need to score points, but I'm saying for what the Giants are right now, I think what's most important is getting wins. How you get a win, I don't really care. It's getting a win that matters.
I think the thing is, I think we'd all just like to maybe just see one game. Like, I'd love to see a week where, like, maybe halfway through the third quarter, I'm like, yeah, this is chilling. We're pretty we feel confident. We're not thinking we're going to blow it. And that could potentially have been that game yesterday. That game should have been dead and buried, and Cleveland shouldn't have been in a position to potentially drive within the 2-minute warning to tie or win the game. I can't remember which one it was, but they should have been dead and buried a long time ago. And that was probably maybe the only knock on yesterday, if we want to call it a knock. I don't know if that's maybe being a bit too harsh, but the fact that we just didn't.
Yeah, we had the chances. We had the chances to, yeah. And I'm not saying Daniel Jones is the future, like far from it. I'm not saying that he's going to be the quarterback into next year. I don't think he's going to be. But for what we have of this season, I think, scoring 21, 24, 27 points a game is going to notch us a fair few wins, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the scores for yesterday. 21 points wins us 3 games out of the rest of the games that were played yesterday. I think that's the biggest problem, is that 21 points has done it this time, but might not in the future. I mean, you just have to look at Andy Dalton, who came in for the Panthers and put up 36 against the Raiders, who had beaten the Ravens the week before. I mean, it's an unpredictable league, but so far this season we've scored 6, 15, 16 last week. I can't remember exactly how much it was.
18,
yeah. And then we've scored 21 this week. So yeah, it's trending in the right direction, but I am inclined to agree. I do need to see a big performance from the Giants. The points aren't solely on Daniel Jones. The points are across the board. We didn't really get that many takeaways yesterday from the defense, but this is offense talk. Not defense. Not defense. Right. Singletary. Let's talk about Devin Singletary. He was close on the player of the game for me. Apart from the fumble, that kind of killed that mantra. He was given the lion's share of the snaps for the second week in a row. He played 49 of the 72 that the offense ran this week, similar to what happened last week. Because he was rolling well when he was the hot hands, they decided against using the young running backs too much. However, there were a few times we had 2 running backs on the field, and most of the time when we did, it was Tyrone Tracy who was there as the second. Singletary finished with 16 carries, 65 yards, a touchdown and a fumble. It's worth noting that this is the second fumble in 2 games for Singletary, both exactly the same, not protecting the ball enough, taken out from the blind side with a punch, ball's out, bang, kills a drive. Daniel Bellinger had a 17-yard catch. Before that, Singletary is going to run through for another first down. We're driving. At that point, I think the Browns had only scored 7 points. So we have an opportunity there to go up and really start to stretch the game from them. And it's another drive killer. You could argue that last week's fumble was exactly the same. It was a drive killer where we potentially go and score, and we don't have to talk about having the loss last week. It's also his 16th fumble since coming into the league in 2019, which for players who have come into the league since, or from 2019 and onwards, he leads that. And I think he's only 4th in total fumbles among running backs since then, behind Eckler and a couple others. So it's not ideal. He's doing a really good job of replacing Barkley so far. He runs downhill. He's not afraid to sort of run into the tackles and get extra yards. He can shake and bake it and make a defender miss, but really need to cut those out if we're going to consistently start performing in this league. In regards to the others, Tracy has really established him as that second back, 22 snaps, 5 carries, 23 yards. Eric Gray, who did not have a good day yesterday, and there'll be more on that later, had 1 carry for 0 yards. Thanks for your contribution.
And the kickoff fumble.
Well, we'll come into that later.
Just on Singletary.
Yeah.
I still ain't forgiving himself up into the end zone. Have you seen the picture it's doing the rounds? I don't know someone might have posted it in the group chat where Slayton's like, "What are you doing?" One day I was like, "Yeah, get down." Darius Slayton's got him in his fancy team like me, I can assure you.
Darius Slayton was you last night.
100%. I was not happy.
Me and Craig were like, Wandale, come on.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it, haven't we? But Barkley did it a couple of years ago against the Ravens.
And did you fancy then as well?
Don't take Giants running backs.
Aren't you glad that Bradshaw doesn't count against fantasy points then, Shane? But then again, it's way before you were supporting When I say Bradshaw, you're thinking WWE, I'd probably.
Yeah, I thought he was on about Farouk as well.
Farouk and Bradshaw. APA, love it.
Right, let's have a look at the next player of the game, which is Kev's. I don't think there's any surprise. I'll just bring that up on screen because, I mean, who else? Who else? What more can we say about this kid? He is already showing that he's an elite receiver, and I will say that he is an elite receiver. Even against a tougher opponent this week with, cornerbacks that are much higher caliber than what we had last week with the Commanders, he was able to just dominate and feast for himself, essentially. He mossed a cornerback to rip away a could-be interception, instead turning it into a catch. He's the only receiver in the league to account for over half its team's air yards with 57.6%. In fact, before looking at his numbers at the bottom, we might as well go through some of the accolades and records that he broke yesterday, because this is going to become something that we're just going to see week in, week out. Shane is going to get sick of these because I know that he loves it when, the NFL media come up with about 30 stat padding things and say he's the first player to do every single one of them. However, let's go through them. He is only the third player to have over five catches and over 65 yards in three consecutive games as a rookie, after Puka Nacua last year and Andre Johnson in 2003 for the Texans.
Wow, Andre Johnson, yeah. Houston Texans.
Yeah. He's the youngest player ever at 21 years and 56 days to have 2 touchdowns in a game, beating Mike Evans by 17 days, And he and Saquon are the only 2 Giants with 20 receptions in their first 3 games. So he really is setting this league alight early. Stats on the day at the bottom of the screen, but for those who obviously are listening, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he's on pace at the moment for about 1,500 yards and 17 touchdowns on the season, which I think Mayo's made the comment there, put your house on Nabers for Offensive Rookie of the Year, because if he's popping those numbers, we're going to see that Pro Bowl, All-Pro, maybe a second-team All-Pro, maybe a first if he's putting up those kind of numbers. I mean, he's in the top 5 for receiving yards already in the league. He's really, really sort of standing out here. His first touchdown, incredible body control to 360 in the air, keep the toes down, make sure the toes hit before the hand hits. Just ridiculous. His long was a 28-yarder, which should have been an interception, really. I mean, DJ threw it up to him. And I think there's a lot of people who are saying, DJ underthrew the ball and, it could have been an interception. They're the sort of throws I want him to make. Like, if Nabers is going to be that alpha dog, give him 50-50 balls and see what happens. Nabers showed that he ripped it out of the hands of Martin Emerson, kept his feet in, gets the 20-yard gain. That's one play where I really do struggle to blame DJ for making that throw. The second one where Nabers breaks it up because Jones hits the defender's hand and it's gone into the double coverage. That's a bad throw by Jones, and Dable called this Nabers' best play on the day, where he broke up that pass, because they take over immediate red zone essentially if we're going for there. So, Malik Nabers has arrived, really, hasn't he? Best receiver we've had since Beckham, and it's not even close. I mean, Shane, you obviously took a big interest in him as Kev did in the pre-draft process, and you both had him. Did you both have him as 2? Can't remember if one of you had Rome as 2 and Nabers as 3. But either way, did you expect this early?
Yeah and no. So he's everything as advertised and more. Excuse me. He was the one who I was like, I said a couple of months before the draft, I was like, if we draft him, I'll buy his jersey, because I do think he can be that good. And like me and Kevin both admitted on here over the last couple of weeks, he's so much better speaking to the media than I anticipated he would be. Like the way Rome spoke to the media was why I want us to take Rome over Nabers, because Rome just speaks like that guy. And we haven't really seen that from Malik, in all honesty. So maybe that was a bit harsh to label that sticker with him, so to speak. But the way he speaks to the media is absolutely spot on. And then, like, in terms of his play on the field, like I say, he's everything as advertised and more, just probably a little bit sooner than what I thought it might be. And in all honesty, and I try not to make this into a bashing thing, but I do think, like, if he had like a Mahomes or an Allen throw into him, like, what else we might actually see from him.
Yeah, 100%. I know. I'm pretty sure you said that last night, didn't you? Like, could you imagine? And it is true. It is true. Like, you know, maybe that's what they need to turn the Pro Bowl into, so we can see these sort of things, as opposed to making them dive off diving boards into swimming pools to make a catch or whatever it is that they get them to do now. Dan, last time we had a receiver like this was Odell. There's no way to sort of pussyfoot around that. Now, Odell didn't really get to set the world alight straight away because he had that injury, and then obviously the first couple of games, first couple of games he had, we saw it, and we obviously got the catch in that first season. Does Malik feel like Beckham 2.0, or do you think it could be more?
I mean, it's scarily similar. The amount of hype around him in comparison to what Odell, the hype around Odell was back in 2014. 2014? Yeah, something like that. So Odell finished the season that year with 91 receptions for 1,305 yards and 12 touchdowns in just 12 games. You said Nabers' his projections around 1,500 yards. He's projected as at the moment 136 catches for 1,535 yards and 17 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
If he gets anywhere close to that, I think it's more than Odell version 2.0. He's a completely different beast. Like, I expected him to be good, but damn, he's good. Like, he is, like you said, after 3 games, he is already elite. And I've got no qualms about saying, no question about saying that he is already elite. The one thing I didn't expect him to have this soon is as many targets as he's had in the first 3 weeks. He's leading the league with targets. He's got 37 targets across 3 games. And he's like look at all the other major receiving metrics. He's in top 5 for most of them. So I think he can be so good. And the fact we've only seen 3 games of what he can do in this league is such a small sample size. It's almost like, what else are we going to see of him this year? I think, like we said earlier in the group chat, he's favourite amongst many bookies for offensive rookie of the year. As Mayonnaise says, put your house on it. I mean, Shane's already got a bet on it, and he's already laughing about it. So, you know, the world is an oyster for Malik Nabers, and I think we've only just seen the beginning of him.
Bear in mind as well that all the hoo-ha at the beginning of the season when they unretired the 1 for him, and he's never done anything in a game. I think he's probably earned that already from what he's done for the team. Let's have a look at some of the other receivers then. Despite being overshadowed by Nabers, you cannot take away that Wan'Dale Robinson continued his solid start to the season, and really the continuation of the end of last season where he was really strong as well. 8 targets, 7 receptions, 61 yards for Wan'Dale. Just a really safe pair of hands in that slot, and you know, is wide receiver 2 at the moment, because wide receiver 3 is 4 is a very weird battle going on. Outside of that, Slayton had 2 targets, 1 reception. Theo Johnson, 3 targets, 1 reception. Both of those players had a drop. Bellinger, 1 target, 1 reception, and Hyatt, 1 target, 0 reception. In fact, on the season, I've got the details here. Bear with me 2 seconds. Hyatt has 2 targets for 0 receptions on the entire season so far. I know that there was the chatter last week about, if you're not going to play me, trade me, and
I think
he
it's
shot that
criminal.
down. He shot that down. Justin Pennick made a good point. At the end of the day, he's got to prove it. He was a third rounder. He's not a first rounder or a second rounder. He's a third rounder receiver. He doesn't just get to walk into the team. He does need to prove it on the field. And at the moment, he's not getting the opportunity to do so, but there's obviously got to be a reason behind that as well. Depending on what happens with the Slayton thumb injury, he might get that opportunity on Thursday night. If Slayton does play, chances are he's not going to be playing as much as he has been. So maybe this is the highest time to shine. But if we have a look at the offensive line, this is where, it's been up and down, I think, in the game. But when you're going up against Myles Garrett, that's to be expected. One thing I will say, third week in a row where our offensive line was consistent and played every snap together. All 5 members of the offensive line. That's 3 100% games, even with JMS going into that medical tent. So that's so good for consistency. And that was one thing that Justin Pugh kind of harped on about when I was talking to him just before the season, saying that, the one thing that let them down was consistency. And that's what we're getting this year. Now, Mr. Consistent, Andrew Thomas, had a bit of a mixed day against Garrett. I know a lot of people are calling it a rough day. He had a full start, a declined hold, 3 QB hits, 5 hurries. But he did hold his own at times against Myles Garrett. Like, I'm sure there are other tackles out there who've had much worse days. We expect high performance from Thomas. And yes, we didn't get that to the level maybe we expected, but he still managed to stuff him on a large part of his pass rush. It's just unfortunate that he had a bit of an off day. If you do compare it to the rest of the line, Thomas gave up 8 pressures. The rest of the line gave up 9 pressures combined. Illuminor had 4, Runyon and Smith both had 2, and Van Roten had 1. It's weird. Van Roten, when you're watching the game live, seems to be culpable for a few things, but when you kind of look back at the ratings and the pressures that he gives up and his pass rushing efficiency, they all seem to be really high. I don't know if I'm missing something there, but I mean, I'm not.
I know he had at least 1 flag yesterday, if not 2. So yeah, he seems to be pretty consistent. Yeah, he seems to be pretty consistent, really, I think.
So, Dan, I mean, I'll come to you first. 3 weeks in, what's your assessment of the offensive line now?
Solid, not great by any stretch of the imagination. Not, we've spoken about this many times, saying we just need an average offensive line, and I think that's what they have been, average. But the first 3 games we've seen Daniel Jones given time to pass. We've seen a pocket. What is a pocket? We're so not used to him having that clear space and time to actually be able to look downfield, albeit to his first read most of the time. But he's getting the passes in there, and we've been, fairly successful running the ball, and that a lot of that is attributed to the offensive line creating the holes for him. But I think the credit really goes to Karen Brasillo, because it's the difference between the lines. I mean, granted, obviously we brought in some big pieces on this line this year, but the difference is night and day almost, and it's almost like they're back enjoying playing football again. Obviously we had JMS last year in his rookie year, solid year. Andrew Thomas as solid as he normally is, but the rest of this line look like they're settled in pretty well, and they all seem to be, like I said, just playing together. Yeah, there's been hiccups along the way. Andrew Thomas didn't have his best game yesterday, but I think overall, in general, it's been solid, and that's where we need it to be. We just need it to be good, and so far they have been.
I mean, I wonder what our ex-offensive line guru gives it in the terms of a grade so far.
It's been all right, and that's what I want. I don't want anything amazing. I'm up with all right, and it's been all right and maybe a bit better, to be honest. I think, Andrew Thomas had a off day, a poor day, whatever day you want to call it. But when was the last time we actually said that? Like, I can't remember us having that discussion on here, to be honest. So that speaks volumes for it. And he was going up against Myles Garrett, who is one of, if not maybe the best pass rusher in the NFL. Was he Defensive Player of the Year last year or 2 years running or something?
Yeah.
He's
like
not like
he was
pass rusher, yeah. It's not like he had an off day against, I don't know, old Shane Zimenez or something. Do you know what I mean? Like he had an off day against someone who's up there. Yeah, you know what I mean? So, Thomas had an off day, but if you look at how many times we've said those words on here, you probably count on one hand, if that. And like I say, the O-line is doing all right, and that's all that we want. We've always said it on here. We don't want or expect a top 5 offensive line. We just want something that we're not going to have to moan about every week, or I'm not going to have to moan about.
And the beautiful thing is as well, we've not really had to mention them too much this year, whereas last year we were just lauding them week after week after week. The offensive line, the offensive line, the offensive line. This year it's been okay, and that's all we needed, and that's all we expected, really. So it's a marked improvement.
And that's probably the best compliment you can give an offensive line boy, not talking about them. You're not talking about it, doing something right.
Exactly that. All right. Is that the offensive done?
It is.
It is. It's time for defense. All righty. So Shane Bowen's bend but don't break defense that we saw last week took a back seat on the bench this week. The Giants' pass rush brought the house, and we ended the game with 8 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, 19 pressures, along with forcing Deshaun Watson to cough up the ball twice. In what was, in the first half, unbelievable defensive performance. Second half, not as good, but we'll get into the details of it. Those 8 sacks in a game, incidentally, are the most logged by a Giants defense in 10 years, since 2014. In what was by far our best defensive performance of the year, we allowed only 3.4 yards per play. And then it doesn't, build out 3.4 yards over 3 downs. That equals 10 yards. So, there's still a little bit of work to do. But for the first time in what seems like forever, we actually seen some signs of having a run defense as well, which, shock horror, hasn't happened for a long time. We allowed 69 yards on 18 carries, albeit against a Browns team without star running back Nick Chubb, and an offensive line that was severely weakened. Obviously, they lost key pieces throughout the game as well. So, it wasn't that it wasn't made any more difficult than it needs to be. And as Mayonnaise rightly said, we made a team punt. We had back-to-back sacks, and we had a sack fumble. We absolutely did have all 3 of those, which it goes to show that this defense can and is a really good unit. The whole defensive front, including our star pass rushers in Brian Burns and Thibodeau, actually turned up this week. Burns recorded his first sack as a Giant, and it was a strip sack nonetheless as well. And Tibbs coming up big on that attempted quarterback sneak by Jameis Winston as well on a big 3rd down. Even Azeez or Jalari had an impact. He recovered that 4th quarter fumble, and then also the likes of Michael McFadden and Bobby Okereke bringing some heat as well. Yeah, they didn't, stat-wise, they didn't have the numbers, but the pressure was there, and they were very disruptive, and it made Deshaun Watson rush. It made him, make panic throws, and it made him just look like the poor quarterback that he is. There you go. McFadden was second in pressures after Dexter Lawrence. He absolutely was. Through 3 weeks, we're tied for 2nd in the league with 14 sacks, the most we've had in the first 3 games since 1985. Only Minnesota ahead of us with 16, with 5 of those coming in the week 1 game against the Giants. There were some struggles, though, most notably in the secondary. Tay Banks seemed to be left on an island with Amari Cooper far too often. and it was found in very sort of soft man coverage with no safety help. And against one of the best receivers in the league over the last few years, you can't really do that. Cooper caught for 7 of his 12 targets for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. And yet again, it wouldn't be the Giants defense without talking about missed tackles. 5 players missing more than 20% of their tackles, including Azeez Ojulari missing all of his. It simply isn't good enough. We've seen too many times where missed tackles lead to big gains, and it happened again last night. We just need to wrap them up and bring them down. And we saw it in the first half. We saw some really great tackling in the first half. Second half tailed off a little bit. As mentioned in the injury news, with both Drew Phillips and Adoree leaving the game with calf injuries, and there's obviously now a lot of uncertainty about the defensive backfield going into Thursday night against Dallas. Isaiah Simmons being used to fill the gap in the slot doesn't feel we have a huge amount of confidence, but you know he was a first round draft pick back in the day for Arizona, so there's obviously some sort of talent there. So it remains to be seen what happens on Thursday with him. But Shane, over to you for the standout players on defense.
Yeah, sorry, just taking myself off mute. So the first one that I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to get straight to it with my player of the game, to be honest with you. And I opted to go for a guy who I think he stood out massively yesterday, and that was Elijah Chatman. You know, his snap count over the last couple of weeks has been a bit up and down. I think he had 24 week 1, 16 week 2, and then he had 21 yesterday. But in them 21, I feel like he really made him count. 4 tackles, 4 pressures, 1 sack, defensive grade of 86.6, pass rush of 78.6. And, you know, one of the reasons why I've picked him, not just for them stats, but this is a guy who was just an undrafted free agent. He was an invite to camp. You know, I didn't originally even have him making the 53. I thought, you know, he might end up being a practice squad player at best. But, you know, talk about seizing that opportunity, you know, for a guy who's apparently undersized. I think he comes in at 6'2", is it? 6 foot dead on, 278 pounds out of SMU. Is there anything better than a player playing as well as what they did yesterday, knowing that they have kind of come from nothing in the sense of they weren't promised anything. They weren't, you know, a draft pick where there's a little bit more to lose. It was purely as an invite to camp. And then he's just seized every opportunity that's been given to him. So, you know, I just think he really stood out for me yesterday, to be honest with you. He was credited with 1 stop as well by PFF. So, yeah, Elijah Chatman was the standout for me. If you got anything you want to add on to him, Dan, before I move on to any other players?
Just the fact that he was an undrafted free agent rookie. There's been a lot of hype about him in the preseason, and I think he had a fantastic game yesterday. You know, he's shown, yeah, like Mane said, he's got that dog in him. He is showing that he's got that dog in him. He's fighting for every snap he's on that field. And I was really, really impressed with him yesterday.
One thing that's been understated about Chatman was the fact that there was that scramble by Deshaun Watson where Chatman decided that he was going to show off that ridiculous speed yet again by chasing him down. And that's the sort of thing, like he almost looks like he goes out to play every snap like he knows his whole career is dependent on it. And I love that.
Yeah, massively.
So the next player I'm going to go to, who I think deserves a mention, he's probably the player who's had his best game for us since he joined, since we made that acquisition for him, and that's Brian Burns. He was the highest graded player for the Giants yesterday, and you can see why. 6 total tackles, 1 sack, 1 hit, 4 hurries, 1 assisted tackle, credited with 1 stop, and also had the 1 forced fumble as well. You know, I feel like a little bit harsh, but like I still want to see more from him because I know he can be more. But hopefully that's a game that's going to give him loads of confidence. We know what Brian Burns is all about. We know what he can do, and we got an insight into it yesterday. You know, easily his best game. It's what we've all been asking for. We've wanted sacks off him, and we got that. And you know, I said last week that I thought that him or Tibbs could get a forced fumble, and he went out there and got it. And that's the kind of players that we need if we're not going to be making plays with the likes of interceptions. We need to be turning the ball over in a different way. And, like, you know, credit to him on that forced fumble as well. Easily his best game. And, you know, I really hope, and I'm sure it will, not going to be the last time we're going to be saying something similar this season.
No, I think it was fine. It was nice to see Brian Burns finally turn up in a game, and he just looked so disruptive. And I think he, you know, the strip sack, the moves he made inside were disgusting. And I think if he can show that every game, the rest of the season, money well spent. Those spin moves he's got are dangerous, and just the quickness that he showed yesterday as well. I think we're really sort of hopefully starting to see the good side of Brian Burns come through.
Next player I'm going to give a shout out to is someone who I think he's already been mentioned in the comments already a little while ago, and that was linebacker Michael McFadden. You know, again, another guy who's kind of turned that LB2 position into his own, really. Obviously, he took it last year, and he's really grown and developed in ways that even I didn't think that he could potentially do it. You know, he had 3 tackles even. Would have been nice if he'd had 3 sacks. 1 sack, 2 hits, 3 pressures is what I meant. Get in there. It's been a long day. 3 pressures, 1 sack, 2 hits, 5 tackles, and he had the 1 missed tackle. Now, that's probably been the biggest knock on Michael McFadden in the NFL, to be honest, is the missed tackles. You know, he should have had that sack on Jaden Daniels last week where he just couldn't quite bring him down. He got there this week with a sack, but obviously still had that 1 missed tackle. They've had to, you know, something to pick on at Michael McFadden. It would be, I'd like to see him wrap up a little bit more and bring the ball carriers down. But hopefully that's going to go with time. And, you know, I think in all honesty, he's got great guys to learn around from as well. You know, he's got Bobby O, Dex, Burns. You know, he's got players that have kind of been there and done it. And, you know, I'm sure these are probably conversations that they're going to be having in the position rooms as well. But, you know, again, Michael McFadden, easily his best game of the season so far for me, even though it's only 3 weeks in.
Dan's on mute.
There we go. I'm back off. I just think he had a really solid game. I think his pass rushing yesterday was pretty good. He was pretty good in coverage, and I think he just had an all-round good game, really. He just needs to tighten up that tackling, and I think he'll be a really sort of well-rounded stud of a linebacker, really. Shane on mute now.
Yeah, I was switching pages, and I was like, I'm on mute. I need to make sure I can get off quickly. Jason Pinnock deserves a shout out as well. You know, he had 3 pressures, 1 sack. I don't know what it is, but I just love it when DCs blitz them safeties. Like when they send the safety up on a blitz and you see the safety get home. I don't know, man. It's just something about it. I love it when they do it. You know, we've seen it with cornerbacks, and you see it with safeties as well. And Pinnock's a perfect example of that. He also did have the 1 missed tackle. He was also targeted once. He did allow 1 catch, but it was only for 3 yards. But, you know, Jason Pinnock, he's coming to that Mr. Reliable mantra in the absence of Xavier McKinney, who obviously left in the off-season. And I think, again, for another player who, you know, he was picked up off the Bills practice squad. I'm pretty certain he's saying he was an undrafted free agent. No, he's a round 5 pick. But obviously he went to the Jets, and then was it the Bills squad he come off or the Jets squad he come off? I can't quite remember.
Signed him off the Jets.
Off the Jets. But, you know, again, I think the Jets are probably looking at that play right now that you get from Pinnock, and they're disappointed that they let him go. It looks like, I think the best way I can describe Pinnock, he's reliable. He's always there or thereabouts in terms of where the ball is and in terms of tackling. And I think, you know, someone who you just pick up off a waiver wire and he's your starting safety and the leader of that group, really. Obviously, he's been in the league longer than Belton, been in the league longer than newbie. So, yeah, Jason Pinnock, I thought deserves a shout out today as well.
Yeah, massively. And I think looking back at the first 3 games of the year, I think he's missed all but he's been on the field for all but 2 snaps. So that shows the reliability. And yeah, he's one of those players last year that we didn't really expect anything from. And then all of a sudden he sort of came out of nowhere and it's like, wow, who is this guy? And he's just consistently performed week in, week out. And he's one of the big pieces on this defense now. And I think he's shown that he's more than capable of playing the position. And he's one of the leaders on this defense for sure. And I just think all around his play has been really, really good so far this year. And he definitely deserves that mention.
And last but not least, you can't mention reliable and consistent and dependable without who?
His jersey's over my shoulder. Who else? Dexter Lawrence, of course. I mean, I kind of get a bit... I don't get fed up of saying he's my player of the game because, let's face it, he's the fucking man. Dexter Lawrence is the man. I mean, he's the best interior defensive player in the league, bar none. Another amazing game, stats on screen as it shows: 7 pressures, 2 sacks, 87.5 defensive grade, 76.6 pass rush grade. He's only, he's not on the field every snap. We don't expect him to be, but when he is on the field, he just makes a hell of a difference, and he's just so disruptive on that line. What more can we already say about him that's not been? What more can we say about him that's not already been said? 17 total pressures across 3 games, 3 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, and 12 hurries in total. He's just, you run out of superlatives to say about the man. He is the leader on this defense. He's the man in the middle, and he's just. I think without him, I think this defense is a lot worse, and I think he just epitomizes this Giants defense this year. And I think, I'll be glad to pick him as my player of the game every week this season because, he is that good. And as Mayonnaise said, All-Pro Dexter Lawrence. There's without a shadow of a doubt he's going to be an All-Pro this year. All right, then. I did want to mention one other, one other guy. Although statistically, he sort of didn't have the best game. Dan Duggan pointed out this morning in a post, Bobby Okereke has now played 1,322 consecutive snaps on defense since joining the Giants last year. That's 20 complete games that he's played in a row. He has become our Mr. Reliable in the heart of that defense. And although Dex rightly gets the plaudits for consistently being that wrecking ball on the D-line, I don't think it can be underestimated how important and influential that Bobby is to the defensive unit as a whole. He's allowed the likes of Micah McFadden to develop into a real, what could be a real powerhouse of a linebacker if he tightens up his tackling. But he's got, like Shane said, he's got the pieces around him to guide him and coach him and push him on to become a really, really good linebacker in this league. And I think Bobby O is just solid. He's consistent. He's a model professional. And he's one of the key pieces on this defense. And I think, like I said, he didn't have the best game statistically, but I think the fact that he started 20 consecutive games and had every single snap in those 20 games, it deserved a shout out. So credit where it's due. Bobby O flying under the radar this year as usual. Exactly. Just does his thing week in, week out, and is always there or thereabouts in terms of, having that influence on a game. But I do want to sort of have a touch on the pressure on the quarterback this week. And I think it was obviously a lot more improved on the first 2 weeks. But Craig, do you think, were you surprised how much pressure we saw on Deshaun Watson this week?
No. I was surprised at the play calling from Shane Bowen being as aggressive as it was. But I wasn't surprised at the pressure numbers. I mean, you're talking about a team who have Jedrick Willis, who was questionable coming into the game. He was injured during the game. They have Wyatt Teller or Miles Teller? I can't remember. One of their guards, their right guard, he went down during the game, didn't return. They still have Conklin out, so they've still got a backup tackle playing there. They are going up against Dex, Thibodeau, and Burns, who I expect to be good. So I wasn't surprised to see that much pressure. I think what I was surprised about is where the pressure's coming from sometimes. You look at those linebacker blitzes, you look at those cornerback blitzes, and you look at the safety blitzes that Bowen's pulling in. Our blitz rate yesterday was, from what I can gather, a lot higher than it was the week before. Whether that was by design because of how poor it was the week before, I don't know, or whether it was just a game plan thing just for this game. But that's the sort of pressure that I want to see. We keep talking about how we've paid so much money on the defense and how we're building up the defense to own games, and the only way to own games is to create pressure. So it's almost what I expect as opposed to being surprised by it, I think.
I suppose the fact that 8 different players had input on the sacks. I mean, I know we had Aziz was accredited for 2, Dex was accredited for 2, but then there were 6 other players that had an impact on at least one of those sacks. So it's not what we've seen in the first 2 games of the year, and I think the play, like you said, the defensive play calling really surprised me. But what did you make of the overall sort of pass rush in the game, Shane? Do you think it was a marked improvement on the first 2 weeks?
Oh, absolutely. I think it was everything we've been calling for. And I think, I don't know, did someone send a tweet out that come up on our feed about who's on the sideline? Is it Wink or is it Shane Bowen? Just like with the amount of blitzes that we were sending. I think in all honesty as well, you had to do it yesterday. When you look at the Browns' offensive line and the injuries that they had, I think if you didn't send pressure yesterday, you'd have had a lot of explaining to do if we didn't go on and if we didn't win that game, because the injuries they've got and the talent that we've got at the pass rush, you just had to send the pressure. So, it was nice to say. Do I expect it every week? No, of course not. I think, the fact that the Browns had so many players missing on the offensive line played a big part in that. But, more than anything else, I hope it just breeds confidence both with Shane Bowen and with the players as well. Because, if you have another poor game on defense yesterday, confidence and morale starts to drop. So hopefully it's just going to be a nice little boost for them, especially going on to Thursday against Dallas in a short game week.
Yeah, man. I think overall, I think the defensive performance was pretty good. It was just the secondary struggled, like I said earlier, with Tay Banks being left one-on-one with Amari too many times. And, there's only so much pressure you can get on the quarterback. Obviously, he's going to make some wild throws. And there was a couple of passes he made deep downfield to Amari Cooper that I know there was one he just sort of landed on his back and it looked like he'd sort of really done himself a really bad injury, but he was putting himself out there. And I think sometimes Banks's coverage was a bit too soft. And I think he needs to be a lot tighter to the man than he was. But overall, I think defensively, I think we played pretty well yesterday. I'm happy with it. All right, and Craig, special teams.
Special teams, special plays.
We had a kicker.
We do have a kicker. He wasn't good, but we have a kicker. No. It was a horrific start for special teams. Eric Gray obviously coughed up the ball on the opening kickoff, which led to the Browns taking over in Giants territory. And then one play later, we give up a touchdown. Really, really poor. I don't understand why they're persisting with this Gray thing on kickoffs. I'd much rather see Tyrone Tracy back there. Or, if they're not going to use Gray, look at bringing up Dante Miller. Just try and inject some speed in there. You cannot tell me that Eric Gray is the answer on kickoff. It's just not working. And how long is it going to be until we end up changing from pointing fingers at Eric Gray to pointing fingers at Gabriel for persisting with it?
It just doesn't. fill me with any confidence seeing Eric Gray back there.
No, exactly. So, yeah. Kicker Greg Joseph was able to nail his extra points, but the second you took him any further, he failed to make his 48-yard field goal. Would have made it a more comfortable game for the Giants, less of a ropey ending to it. And let's be honest, it's not like, he pushed it, he shanked it, he completely shanked the field goal, and it just doesn't breathe confidence into that side either. He's been on a lot of teams in his short time in the league, and that's kind of one of the reasons why you really, really expected him to hit that, especially on his first start for a brand new team. And it's fueled the fire today with Brian Dable already being asked questions about what's going to happen on Thursday and whether it will be Jude McTominay or whether it will be Greg Joseph. And to be honest, I mean, Jude can't be much worse,
Jude.
can he?
With Jude. Go with Jude.
Punter Jamie Gillen stood out again, with most of his punts being absolute boomers. Averaged 51.6 per attempt on 7 attempts and landing 2 inside the 20, with another just missing due to a horrible bounce, which would have been downed inside the 5 if it would have taken a more favourable bounce. And then a special mention to Bryce Ford-Wheaton for his outstanding work as a gunner. He's really come on this season after obviously he had his ACL tear last year, wasn't able to contribute during his rookie season. Hasn't really been seen as a wide receiver, but in special teams he's really showing up 2 really important tackles and has been a real bright spot for the Giants on that side of the ball, which, considering how much we used to moan about special teams last year, you can't really say that as a whole it's really improved just yet. I'd like to see a bit more. Obviously injuries won't help that, but we've mismanaged week 1 with Gunner, and I can't remember the guy's name. I'm going to have to quickly look it up. But our special teams punt returner that everyone was talking about, saying he was really good. Is there any danger that we can stop fair catching stuff inside the 10? Can we give him a little bit of time? Can we try and progress the ball? Not Smith Marset. That's it. I'm not overly impressed with that as of yet. I know it's only been 1 game because we couldn't force a punt last week. But I'm not a fan of us just fair catching it and starting deep in our own territory.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make it any easier for the offense. We saw it last year, obviously with Gunner, obviously breaking off that huge punt return for a touchdown. We don't necessarily want to see. I mean, it'd be great to see that every punt, but we just want to see at least if it's going to be inside the 10, then at least try and make an effort. Maybe, I don't know, but nothing about this special teams at the moment fills me with any confidence. The only thing that does is Jamie Gillen and Casey Crider. They're the only things that really sort of fill me with any confidence, is because those 2 are pretty damn consistent. Everything else is a bit up in the air.
I think he's out for another. There's no time scale on it.
No.
When Dabes was asked after week 1, he said a long time, and the fact that we've signed Smith Marset kind of shows that we're probably looking at least 4 weeks, I think.
I'd be surprised if it's any longer. I'd be surprised if it's not longer.
He said long term.
I think, like I said, Bryce Ford-Wheaton, I think, had a really good couple of big tackles, which was quite nice to see. But special teams is a bit meh at the moment, isn't it? And I think we just need to see a bit more consistency with the special team. It doesn't help, obviously, having a new kicker in as well. Is he going to kick this week on a short week? Who knows? It says it all that he's bounced around from team to team to team. I know he had a contract extension at Minnesota when he was there, but I think that's the only time he's ever been kept on for longer than a season at any team. And even then, he wasn't the best kicker in the league. He was just serviceable, but he didn't have a good one on Sunday. All right, Craig, have you got a little something for me and Shane?
Yeah, because we've had 3 weeks go by and we've got a little bit of time. We'll have a bit of fun. Viewers can get involved in the comments as well if they want to. But I'm going to throw some stuff at you and see if you guys can come back and see how much you've been paying attention so far this season. So,
Oh God,
who has the most snaps for the Giants on special teams so far?
Bryce Ford Wheaton.
I don't really pay attention during special team snaps. I don't know. Good question.
Yeah, it's not important enough to take forever.
Go on.
Dane Belton, 64. Second is Ty Summers, 53. And Ty Summers has no more practice squad elevations. So we could see some roster movement this week if they decide that they're going to keep him, because he does seem to have been pretty big on that. Who is our highest pass blocking graded player? Or our top three?
Top 3 pass blocking.
Runyon.
You want all 3?
No, you can just fire names out.
JMS.
Tyrone Tracy, 77.9 pass block.
So I thought it was going to be someone really obscure, and I was going to go for one of the tight ends, but I was like, nah, the tight ends are being shit.
Yeah, man hurts.
Mayo has said Man Hurts is second, 77.2, and then Daniel Bellinger's 72.5. The highest graded offensive lineman is Illuminor, 64.1.
Okay.
At the moment.
I went with JMS because I thought he's been pretty solid. But there we go. All right.
Who has the most penalties on offense?
Most penalties on offense.
Daniel Jones.
Andrew Thomas.
Daniel Jones has 2. Jermaine Illuminor has 4 so far. Who has the most missed tackles?
Michael McFadden.
Ojulari.
Cordell Flott has 4. Pinnock has 4.
Flott doesn't surprise me about Flott either, to be fair.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise you. Who's given up the longest play so far this season?
As in DB.
DB.
Banks.
Any guess at a number?
43.
Oh, 44.
Oh.
He's also allowed 3 touchdowns against him, which I guess we could easily guess the 3 because it's Cooper, and Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean, he's been up against some pretty good receivers.
He has. Who has the highest pass rushing grade? With 92.5.
Dex.
I'm sure I saw this earlier. No, name escapes me.
Shane, who's on Sky Sports right now? Pinnock has a 92.5 pass rush grade.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
Just goes to show his value to the team, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Other than that, that's all I had. Just a little bit of fun on there.
Nice.
Just some random stuff that I was looking at earlier and just thought was interesting. The fact that we have a running back, 2 tight ends, a fullback, and another running back, and another tight end, all with higher pass blocking grades than all of our pass blockers already, shows that that's a big improvement from what we were seeing last year. I mean, Bellinger was down. Saquon was never massively great in pass blocking. Obviously, Eric Gray behind him and Breeder were never great either. So is that the Carmen Bracello effect in full force there?
Quite possibly. The line is doing its job, and those around him clearly are as well. It doesn't surprise me. Manhurts and Bellinger in the top three. Obviously, when they're used in 12 personnel, they're coming in and doing their job when they need to. And they're both very good in terms of blocking up front. So, yeah, nice. Thanks for that, mate. That was there's a few surprises in there.
It's just
something I didn't expect.
It's always interesting to see where where some of the stats come from, especially from this early in the season, to see some of the players that are actually making a name for themselves as opposed to some others. So
very true. But just my final thoughts on the game yesterday. I think we said at the start, obviously the Browns were favoured by 6.5 points going into the game. Across all of the games yesterday, no team was favoured more than Cleveland was. And for us to come out of that with a win, it shows the tenacity of this team. The difference we saw in the Giants team yesterday was refreshing, a little bit surprising, but also at times it was a little bit frustrating too. Because where's this performance been over the past 2 weeks? I think at times it wasn't pretty. It wasn't a complete game by any stretch of the imagination. In the second half, it was a bit of a grind. But what matters most, like I said, at the end of the day, is we got that win. And like I said, imagine sitting here at 0-3 going into that short week before taking on Dallas on Thursday night. You wouldn't be wrong to think that we had no chance on Thursday, but going into it 1-2, I think it shows that we do have some fight in us. Dallas are coming into the game on a 2-game losing streak, not just a 2-game losing streak, but losing 2 games at home where they were previously unbeaten in the last 16. So it shows they're there for the taking. For the skeptics out there, it's a Dallas win all over. For the hopefuls, there's a chance. There's a chance. And I think we need to grab that chance and run with it. But unfortunately, that is all we have time for this evening. We'll be back on Thursday at 8:30 to preview the game. Just a mere hours before kickoff. I think kickoff's at 1:15 Thursday night, Friday morning. So we'll be previewing that game Thursday evening. So make sure you tune in then. Anything to add before we go, guys?
No, just, it's good to finally have kind of a winning podcast episode. I'll be honest with you, I didn't think we would be having one anytime soon, in all honesty. But it's good to talk about it. I'm glad to be proven wrong. I'm more than happy for the Giants to continue proving me wrong. I'm not on Thursday's episode, so hopefully I'll get to listen to it before the. Is it going to come out before the game airs? Yeah, because I think I'm at work till about midnight, so I can listen to it on my drive home, ready to watch the game. So looking forward to that. And apologies for people who might have heard Fleetwood Morecambe commentary at any point tonight.
Fleetwood Morecambe.
It's always good to do a Victory Monday. Long overdue this season. The first 2 weeks were well winnable, and we just didn't look up for it. But it looks like maybe we've turned a corner. And it would be nice to start off with, evening out 1-1 on the division on Thursday night. But, we'll go through that on Thursday's preview.
Yeah, it'd be very nice. Thursday's obviously by no stretch an easy game, but I think Jason Pinnock said earlier, how can the Giants reverse their Cowboys' dominance in the recent years? And he said that question reminds him of a joke he always had with his big brother. You can beat on me for them 12 years, but in that 13th, I'm going to bust your ass. And I hope that on Thursday night, the same team we saw last night turn up at home at MetLife under the primetime lights and actually give a good account for themselves. It'd be great to get the win, but I just want to see competitive football against Dallas on Thursday night, and we've got we'll go into it more on Thursday evening when we preview. But yeah, it's been good to talk about a win. It's been long overdue. Like I said, first win since the beginning of January. It seems like that long as well. But thanks to all those that have tuned in this evening. Thanks to everyone in the comments. Really appreciate the love as always. Check out the socials for all the latest news. Follow the links in the description. Give the episode a big thumbs up as well, because it always helps. And yeah, thanks to you guys for joining me, to Shane, to Craig for going through this win with me this evening. It's been good to start off the week in the right way and start off the week with a win. And let's hope we end the week in the right way as well. But yeah, to Shane, to Craig, fuck it. We're signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.